ladies and gentlemen, we've got Vars 2 back at it again with another banger Wuthering Waves video. And this time, he's going to be focusing on a pretty unique topic. Actually, not really a unique one. It's actually kind of generic. The top 5 best DPS characters in Wuthering Waves. And we've gone ahead, we've gotten ourselves experience with every single one of them. And I do believe that Vars is somebody who has really been cooking about this game. So with that, let's go ahead and see what in this 14-minute video he's got to say about those 5 units, and let's just see if we agree.
Version 2 has introduced a ton of new characters to Wuthering Waves, not the least of which a multitude of DPS units, giving us an extensive roster of attackers to choose from, with the game also having 3 central
I guess Changli is technically a DPS. Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, everything's looking good. Then I saw Changli on there, and I was like, I guess.
endgame modes, Tactical Hologram, Tower of Adversity, and Wuthering Wastes. You'll find plenty of reasons to make use of your entire lineup. In fact, you're encouraged, if not flat out required to do so, on account of each attacker performing well in at least 1 or 2 of them. But if you're a new player just starting out, or someone who's trying to build up their roster, I wanted to make an updated guide on the most important DPS units to aim for in Wuthering Waves. The metagame's beginning to accelerate fairly quickly, and we can expect the remainder of version 2 to tax your team building coverage more and more. I'll be choosing 5 characters and 2 honorable mentions based on which units in my opinion cover the most bases. In other words, the goal is to pick DPS
Covering the most bases, so do keep in mind, this qualification is based on, generally, how good a character is, like the best performers in both holograms, TOA, and Wuthering Waves. So it's not just like the best hologram slayer or the best TOA slayer. It's somebody who's performing above average or really at the best in all 3 of those different endgames.
characters who can excel in as many endgame modes as possible.
Fair.
Ideally,
I like
all
that.
3.
I like
Finally,
that
this list will
qualification.
not be ordered. It's not 5th to 1st place. It's just 5 across the board.
Okay, so there's no ranking, just 5 general picks. Okay.
Let's get started. First honorable mention will be Qinqi, being one of the earliest 5-star attackers in the game. Qinqi
Wait, I feel like bro might have angered some individuals over here by not putting her in the top 5. She is an honorable mention. That means that she's not in his top 5 picks. But the thing is, depending on his reasoning, I may or may not agree with him.
was brought in substantially more powerful than just about anyone at the time. When you compare it to the likes of Calcarl, Encore, and Lingyang, they were nowhere close to measuring up to her strength.
True.
How have things held up for her now though? Qinqi's greatest asset was how easy it was to get her off the ground, considering all you needed were coordinated attacks to power up her Forte circuit, an easy task to accomplish in light of Verena driving such a mechanic. Her straightforward game plan also made her easy to play, altogether making for a strong self-sufficient character. That statement remains true to this day, as she's one of the best tower and hologram attackers in the game.
But that's kind of it. Yeah, he mentions very specifically she's one of the best hologram, though I think Zhezhi is really bad against certain holograms. Like, she's really fucking bad against, I think, like, enemies like the Sentry Construct, where her lack of, like, mobility can really cause some issues, like horizontal mobility, not vertical. And TOA, she's fine. But the thing is, in Wuthering Wastes,
But due to her considerable downtime in between rotations, as well as focusing on big explosions over sustained combat, she doesn't fare too well in Whimpering, making
no, she does not. You basically have to play her super sweaty, play her like a freak. You never actually want to have a full Forte circuit with her in Wuthering Wastes. And the end result is that her dual DPS teams are typically the ones that perform the best in WuWa, where her Forte circuit probably reaches 50% charge at a maximum. And going any further than that is going to giga overkill the mobs by an insane amount.
her more of a boss killer than a wave clear, hence why she's an honorable mention. Still a fantastic unit all things considered, and deservedly one of the best in the game even up until now, but her versatility just doesn't extend as far as her competition.
Very
Second
fair
honorable
analysis.
mention will be Qinqi's right-hand woman, Changli. Changli is arguably the most enigmatic unit in Wuthering Waves. She seems to always fluctuate from a middling character to a potential god tier unit, back to middling, then back to god tier depending on who you ask.
My take on Changli is that if you're a beginner player who's not willing to play the game relatively sweaty, this character will be one of the worst picks in the game for you. Straight up. She will not be good unless you're willing to, like, figure out her mechanics and do a lot of practice to, like, sync up all of her Forte stacks with, like, the animation cancel of, like, a dual DPS partner that you're using. However, in Wuthering Wastes, she's pretty simple to use. You just on-field her, build up 4 T-stacks, use her explosion, then liberation, clear another wave, and then use another forte to explode again, and then just like clear waves that way. She is incredibly simple to use in WuWa. Her lower damage relative to other characters doesn't matter as much, so yeah.
Players generally look to be in agreement that Chun-Li has the capability of being one of the best attackers in the game, with the caveat that she may also be the most complex character in the game to play and
yes,
especially to master. I had half a mind to put her in the actual list of top 5, but her prohibitively skill-intensive gameplay implies you'll often run into moments where you mess up on execution, thus impacting her DPS. That being said, Chun-Li's consistent attack patterns and good area coverage make her an excellent wave clearer, and her burst rotations can of course break through tower floors pretty competently. That being said, her performance in holograms greatly necessitates expertise, and even then her single target DPS can lag behind her peers. For that reason, while I don't consider her top 5 in a general setting, for players willing to accept the challenge of mastering her, she is well worth consideration.
But do keep in mind, she is not a self-sufficient DPS character except in Wuthering Waves. If you try to like main DPS Chang Li, like put her with a sub DPS buffer and then, you know, a support like Shorekeeper Verena and then slot her in, your team will be so bad, it's almost unbelievable. It will be so awful, it's insane. So she has to be paired with somebody else that's also dealing damage on the team.
Okay, now that we're done with the honorable mentions, let's not waste any more time and get into the top 5. As the game's inaugural 5-star character, Jiyan's been holding on to his position quite impressively to say the
Wait, is he saying that Jiyan is a top 5 DPS?
least. Usually around midway through version 2, most version 1 units begin to feel the pressure of power creep. However, thanks to the increasing importance of AoE courtesy of Whimpering, Jiyan's one of the best attackers in that game mode, while still operating fantastically in tower. Definitely the best aspect about him.
So remember when I made a tier list where I put Jiyan above Zhezhi? Yeah, brother. Yeah, that was my value tier list. Which DPS is going to be the overall best in the most situations possible. That's why I put Jiyan above Zhezhi. Yeah, I guess Vars did it too.
Is how self-contained he is. Jiyan doesn't really need any specific thing to get going. He's not like Jinshi where you need coordinated attacks, or Zani who relies on Frazzle. Any supports who can augment personal damage, namely in the form of heavy attacks or arrow damage, can be used with him.
True.
His dependence on ultimate is made up for by said ultimate being an empowered state alongside a burst nuke, making him ever so slightly more flexible than characters who get screwed over if their screen nuke fails to crit. Moreover, his rapid attack sequences mean he can parry enemy attacks without having to interrupt his rotation. I would say the biggest downside of Jiyan is that he's functionally worthless outside of his ultimate, and so you'll have to manage cooldowns and give him as much energy as you can. Fortunately, that can be arranged, with enough investment. And on the subject of investment, he scales phenomenally for whales willing to get his later sequences. While I consider Jiyan and Jinshi to be on par with each other more or less, Jinshi's niche is holograms, which don't reset. Jiyan's niche on the other hand is Whimpering, which does reset, and is overall the more valuable game mode to excel in because of that.
True. Let's be fair, Jiyan is not that good in most holograms. He's good against a couple of them, but he's pretty dog shit in a lot of others. Where I have like died during my liberation animation and just died to a one-shot move. But him being better in the resetting content, I think that does actually outweigh it. I think that is actually a really good point.
Overall, Jiyan's an emblematic example of how to build a strong general attacker, although a lot of that has to do with him being the only arrow attacker in the game. When Carlotta comes out, that might change. Next character on the list will be Camellya. Little Miss Crazy Girl has been thoroughly appreciating the advent of Whimpering, as well as the inclusion of Rocha and the Nightmare Crownless Echo to her person.
True.
In a similar fashion to Jiyan, Camellya is a self-sufficient DPS character who doesn't rely on any specific mechanic or engine to thrive. You simply have to load her up with basic attack buffs and whatever general DPS augments you can get your hands on. In fact, she has quite the assortment to
Oh god. Wow, that actually hit through that enemy?
choose from. Rocha, Sanhua, Danchin, and Cantorella
Oh, there was only one dude left after that explosion. That's such a rip.
can all be utilized well on her, with the former being the most effective assuming you have the right equipment. Camellya's shining virtue is their incredible area coverage and consistent output. It would be no exaggeration to call her potentially the best Wuthering Waves attacker in WuWa by way of her limitless uptime and strong damage output. She technically has the proper burst rotation to maximize her DPS, but Whimpering prioritizes consistency over uptime. That being said, her aforementioned burst rotation allows her to still take on tower floors at a competitive pace. Altogether though, Camellya's DPS is evenly split across her ultimate, basic attacks, and forte for a steady stream of damage. Thanks to this, she also has an easy time achieving parries without having to time her attacks, as her hold attack has so many active hits you'll naturally interrupt enemy combos. Camellya is definitely not the best when it comes to boss killing on account of it being difficult to move around on her skill state and her rotation being on the longer end.
I would say Camellya's bossing, in my opinion, is actually pretty consistent as long as you're making sure to use your white-haired form instead of your red-haired form, the blossom form, to like spin around. That's my opinion. That's my take. I have had great experiences bossing with her. The tracking on her spin is actually pretty good against mobile enemies. And if you're sticking to blossom form, though, well, you are kind of just griefing yourself against a single target boss. So there are a lot of stages where it actually kind of starts off AoE and then turns into more of a single target fight afterwards. And Camellya is like one of those units that does kind of like both pretty damn well.
Hologram bosses also tend to move around a lot, which could be troublesome for her since missing even one of her key attacks could compromise the others. Even so,
use white-haired form.
With the help of a broad spectrum of supports, fantastic base damage, and mindlessly easy wave clearing, Camellya is a significant force in tower and almost obligatory in Whimpering, earning her a spot in the top 5.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I would say Camellya definitely has the roughest time in holograms. She, to a degree, depending on your playstyle, can actually feel worse than Jiyan to use. I do think that there definitely are some fights, some encounters where her need to repeatedly hit an enemy and in a lot of ways tank some attacks to even access her ephemeral can make her feel really bad. One example of a fight where I think it's disgusting to use Camellya but it's okay with Jiyan is Inferno Rider 6. Yeah, I don't know if any of you have tried to use Camellya against Inferno Rider 6. It's not a good time.
Something worth mentioning is that due to the concentrated release of Havoc units in late version 1, early version 2, they likely won't release another Havoc unit for a while, choosing instead to focus on other elements.
Does he know? Probably not, no. Yeah, Frolova is probably 1,000,000% Havoc.
Which means, at least for the next version or two, Camellya won't have to worry about getting power crept by a new Havoc attacker.
W editor.
Phoebe will be our next character in the top 5 and easily one of the most powerful units in the game from when she came out, and even more so nowadays. As the centerpiece of the Spectral Fossil mechanic, she has the unique ability to be both a damage dealer and to support depending on if you choose Absolution or Confession.
Yeah, she definitely has a lot of multi-role capabilities. I think she's the one unit in the game that has this sort of potential.
That alone is a big deal. Role versatility means even if she might not be the best attacker, she can always moonlight in supportive fields. But the best thing about Phoebe is that she's one of the best damage dealers in the game too. She can even alternate between modes in the midst of battle, though you have little if any reason to do so. Seeing as we're focusing on DPS in this video, let's stay in that field. First and foremost, Phoebe's damage output is nothing short of exquisite. When sufficiently built and with a proper Frazzle party, Phoebe can easily keep up with the game's top DPS units. Reminiscent of Camellya, Phoebe's damage output is split amongst multiple parts of her kit, making it so she doesn't have to prioritize landing any one specific move, which also gives her better uptime in situations demanding pressure over power. Though her Forte circuit has a fixed cooldown of 24 seconds, Phoebe doesn't have much downtime to her since you can space out her abilities and recast her skill twice in a rotation. Her first 3 sequences all assist in powering her strength even further.
I think that he's correct here. It's just the thing is when it comes to Phoebe is I don't personally feel like her damage is necessarily as high as other units. I think that her damage is extremely comfortable to land, right? And there's almost no way to really like miss her damage as much as characters like her and Carlotta both feel like characters where it's pretty guaranteed to land a lot of your hits. With Phoebe being like ranged with lasers, you can't really miss anything. And her AoE is absolutely ridiculous. But one thing for certain is that she does not have as many iframes as other units like Carlotta. She does not have even close to as many iframes as other units. And the end result is that against super aggressive enemies, sometimes getting off her heavy attacks can feel like shit. And I'm talking about holograms in particular when I'm mentioning this. You have no iframes. You cannot dodge during her heavy attack. And the end result is that against super aggressive enemies like a Fleur-de-Lis, if you tried using Phoebe against her, you just sometimes never use your fucking heavy attack. Yeah, the BA 1, 2, 3 into heavy, you're just like, you're ready. You're just gonna take a hit, bro. The end result is that I think she's a good hologram against certain bosses, a good hologrammer against certain bosses, but complete fucking dog shit against others. She's actually legitimately terrible in the fleur-de-lis fight.
Good for those who can invest more. In addition, unlike the first two, Phoebe can easily work in quickswap teams, creating the opportunity for more skilled players to field her alongside Chanli for even better.
You can use your ETP and cast a heavy attack after. Okay, great. That casts one of my 4 heavy attacks. What do I do for the other 3? Yeah, I can ETP one time. That also takes like 3 fucking seconds to do. Has a long-ass animation.
Results. Despite being a DPS character, she carries a great utility component, her ability to stun targets with her skill for 2 seconds, a property shared amongst her and the remaining 2 units in this list. Timed correctly, it can help you escape a bad situation or delay enemy attacks enough to avoid them. It's also worth pointing out that from a cost-effectiveness point of view, Phoebe might be the most free-to-play friendly character in the game since you can put together a very strong party using only one 5-star character, her.
True, the Verena, Rover, Phoebe team might be one of the best free-to-play ones in the game. Unfortunately, though, it has the downside of, well, you don't have multiple copies of Rover, so if you want to use the Arrow or the Havoc one, I've been telling Kuro Games they need to release a separate version of every Rover, so A, we can play them all in one team, and also B, actually use the other fucking versions of Rover at the same time. They kind of got to do that. I really feel like that would make this game feel so much, it would just elevate this game even further, to the point where you can't even have the critique of like HSR when it comes to this game, where it's like, yes, HSR gives you strong MCs, but then requires you to pull 5-star units to use them, and then also when a new version of the MC comes out, you can't use the old one.
Everyone is Spectre over it, and she can use Mortafi, Sanhua, and Verena for the final slot, making her a good choice for anyone looking to get someone going right away. Better yet, however, Phoebe also is zoomed for increased performance. The inclusion of Zani and Chakona can assist her in the upper end. Now, while her AoE coverage might have you believing she's good for whimpering, Phoebe relies on Spectral Frazzle stacks to be applied on enemies to optimize their damage, and
oh, I completely forgot about this. She before the release of Chakona, Phoebe was the worst Whimpering Waves unit in the game. No lie. No doubt in my mind. This unit was so fucking awful in this game mode, it was unbelievable. But after Chakona's release, I think she's tier 0. Yeah, with Chakona going ahead and applying Spectral Frazzle on every wave, that was her main concern and her main issue.
And the only way to apply Spectral Frazzle in multi-wave is through Chakona. It's by no means enough to render Phoebe ineffective in that mode without Chakona, but it's one thing
you will have better results using pretty much any other character other than Phoebe if you don't have Chakona.
that can get in the way of performing comfortably. All in all, Phoebe's without question one of the best characters in the game in basically all 3 modes. Second to last character will be Zani. As the newest main attacker in WuWa, Zani's the latest phenom around here, and unequivocally one of the best if not the absolute best depending on who you ask. If you thought Phoebe was an absolute beast of a general DPS, Zani takes that a step further. She has some of the highest damage output in the game spread amongst multiple attacks. With their main ones being considered heavy attack and spectral frazzle damage, you can augment her DPS through conventional means like Mortafi, but also through characters like Phoebe, Spectrover, and Chakona, since the DPS is directly tied to how many frazzle stacks you can apply on enemies. This does come with the stipulation that Zani's party versatility isn't the highest, but given Spectral Frazzle's gotten a ton of attention as of late, it's not like you're without variety and options. Complicated as her kit may appear, Zani's
You've got a lot of different teams to run. You've got like the Chakona team where you like liberate super early to get as many stacks as possible, and then you get like extra blaze. You can do some crazy shit where you're like swap canceling with Rover. She in a lot of ways can have some of the most variable gameplay in actually the game, to be honest, based off of how many cancels she can do and the fact that she can gain blaze while having her liberation active.
Actually one of the easiest characters in the game to play at a high level. She effectively auto-parries enemy attacks thanks to her block stances, enabling her to completely negate the damage of the first attack and fire right back with increased vibration reduction. Not to mention her ability to stagger enemies. Zani can do this multiple times throughout her rotation, automatically making her a strong boss killer in that she doesn't give a flying about how much damage hologram enemies can do. Her burst rotation also makes her excellent in tower floors. If you can stack up enough embers, a single Inferno mode could be all you need to one-shot just about anything and everything you run into. Zani's comparatively longer rotation actually works to her advantage in whimpering, even though one would think a long rotation time's usually a bad thing. With her attacks all having good area coverage and her being able to attack multiple times, she can effortlessly tear through waves of enemies. Additionally, main parties allow
I think that it really depends on the balancing of Whimpering Waves for a character like Zani. The second you run into content where Zani has to end up overkilling mobs, where one Nightfall isn't enough to, like, kill the enemies, and she has to cast a second one, and then her attacks start, like, whiffing and hitting air, that's when she starts becoming a little bit way worse. I think as a character, when she has the ability to, in a single Nightfall, like, clear an entire wave, and then can use a fresh attack for the next wave, not really a lot of concerns. But if there's ever an increase to the HP in WuWa, and she doesn't start hitting those thresholds, her kit is a lot rougher because she gets a limited number of attacks. And it just so happens all of these attacks that she's doing are able to clear the waves.
For her teammates to also pitch in. Confession Phoebe, for example, can still do enough to clear a wave while you wait for Zhezhi's ultimate to come off cooldown. Overall though, what makes Zhezhi so good is that she just has really high numbers. Tanking enemy hits, AoE coverage, all that stuff is good, but she just hits like a truck. There are so many ways to boost her damage that she's the best vertical investment character in Wuthering Waves at the moment. You can increase her power conventionally through units like Shorekeeper, you can boost her damage through Frazzle stacks with Chacona and Phoebe, you can give her heavy attack damage as well through Mortifi, so on and so forth. All the same, Zhezhi may also be one of the more expensive characters to vertical invest in. Spectra is the one element without a 4-star character, not including Rover, who I consider a 4-star. And
I think the reason why he's saying she's probably one of the best vertical investment is because you can literally pull Phoebe, a limited 5-star, as well as Phoebe's weapon to directly support her. In a lot of circumstances, we haven't had a lot of sub DPS weapons that actually really meaningfully support another unit. You can look at sub DPS weapons like Stringmaster or like Zhezhi's weapon, Rime-Draped Sprouts. They don't really support the other unit. They amplify the personal damage of the sub DPS instead to increase the team's damage. Phoebe's weapon, on the other hand, doesn't do anything for her personal damage, or it kind of does, but it's almost meaningless what it does to Phoebe's personal damage. And the end result is that all it does is it greatly buffs Zhezhi, but then does nothing for any other unit.
And even Chacona, who can facilitate Spectral Frazzle.
Oh yeah, Chacona's weapon is a lot more personal damage focused than Phoebe's though. Yeah, Phoebe in confession mode literally does not do anything. Actually, it's about, I think she's literally like 2, 3, 4, 5% of the team's damage. Chacona is a much bigger part of the team's damage.
So despite being Arrow, is also a 5-star. In spite of that, the payoff makes her absolutely worth going after. Final character will be Carlotta.
Yeah, I think she should be number 1.
Though I said this video will not be ordered, if I had to choose a definitive number 1, it would be a tie between her and Zhezhi,
I think it's still her.
depending on whom else you have. First and foremost, Carlotta is bar none the best boss killer in the game. Without question, Hologram's best attacker owing to her consistency and inconceivably high DPS output, especially against one target.
Absolutely.
Just like Phoebe, Carlotta is capable of stunning bosses, giving you a nice margin of safety when fighting them. Furthermore, being a gun user, she has the longest effective range among the cast. While other units have to waste time chasing after holograms that like to fly around, Carlotta can stay put and keep firing as always.
She has some of the most disgusting tracking in the game. If you use the second cast of her skill, I'm pretty sure it'll lock onto enemy from like a half a map away.
Not to mention her second skill cast has an incredibly long dash range. Her Forte circuit builds up seamlessly, and all parts of her kit from her skill to ultimate to Forte do significant damage. If you're not a fan of the whole Spectral Frazzle mechanic and prefer units with a quote-unquote normal playstyle, look no further than Carlotta. It's really hard to mess up her combos once you play her for more than 5 minutes, not just from your own mechanics but also enemies too.
True, she just ignores half the mechanics in the game. She literally has an inherent skill that says if she ever attacks while she's in the air, she's fucking invulnerable. Straight up, she's just invulnerable while she's in the air.
If and when you can execute her perfectly, enemies that can survive her entire burst rotation are few and far between. She is that strong. Having said that, though a number of her attacks can strike enemies in a cluster if they're next to each other, Carlotta is more single target oriented, naturally making her more suited for tower and holograms. However, because her DPS is spread across multiple hard-hitting strikes, chief among them being the 4 shots from her ultimate, if you have someone on the team who can group enemies for her, or the waves themselves are tightly packed already, Carlotta can still be a serviceable unit in Whimpering. She falls short when compared to Camellya and Jiyan, but by no means is she unusable in that mode either.
She's particularly quite strong in dual DPS in Whimpering Waves. A combo that I actually like to run is Zhezhi and Carlotta, where Zhezhi deals with grouped up mobs with Liberation Cast as well as her Forte. And Carlotta takes care of like the big elites that take a lot of damage. And so, yeah, I've run so many dual DPS teams because a lot of people pulled both Carlotta and Zhezhi across the update in 2.0 when WuWa was a little bit harder. And that was a very consistent team that I would clear on pretty much every single account with, because their AoE wasn't the best, and their overkilling was definitely something to keep in mind, but when you combine them together, they can get the job done.
Carlotta also happens to be a very flexible character to build, benefiting from all manner of secondary party members. Zhezhi is her best complement, of course, but she can still capitalize on Brant, Cantarella, Sanhua for crying out loud, which is funny, or even the likes of Yang Tal.
Okay, I'm gonna be real with you. If you're running Sanhua and Carlotta, I feel like you're kind of trolling. Please stop doing this, guys. Sanhua buffs basic attack damage. Carlotta literally has one attack that's basic attack damage in her kit. It is the plunge attack that she does before her Forte circuit. A plunge attack. This is the one attack you are buffing in Carlotta's kit. You're buffing 76.69 at level 6. That is what the amplification is on. And if we're gonna say, oh, people are only using her for Moonlit Clouds and the attack buff, brother man, just use Yang Yang instead. She'll give you energy. Yang Yang will give you energy, will give you the attack buff, and nearly as fast as a rotation time. And believe me when I say the energy is just gonna be a lot better. Energy and grouping.
Jiyan Mumi. Further, because Carlotta is a hypercarry attacker, vertical investment pays off on her in spades. I don't consider her quite as free-to-play friendly as Phoebe, but she's certainly easier to get going than Zhani. Hands down, a priority target if you're planning to take on WuWa's endgame. And that wraps up my top 5. Jiyan, Camellya, Phoebe, Zhani, and Carlotta.
I would say these are pretty much my rankings too. And the reason why I don't have characters like Zhang Liao on here is because Zhang Liao actually does not really have that good of a hypercarry team. His hypercarry team is, honestly, it does less damage than a Jiyan. Jiyan with a Mortifi does more damage than a Zhang Liao with a Yinlin. It is a bit of an issue, to be honest. Yeah, and that's due to Yinlin not being that good and Zhang Liao having one of the longest rotations in gacha gaming. And so, my personal opinion is that if there's some way to, like, increase Zhang Liao's attack speed, that would probably help. But yeah, bro is a little bit slow. He is a little bit slow. He still maintains his damage uptime in, like, dual DPS. But I would have to say right now, this character, which, you know, he was given out for free and everything, I think that due to the low quality of, like, Yinlin's actual contributions, it's made his hypercarry team kind of troublesome. Because Yinlin needed to have, like, some attack buff or something to actually make his super long-ass rotation kind of worth it in content. Yeah, he maybe needs, like, an attack speed buff, bro. Something along those lines, if he's gonna keep up his performance in hypercarry.
With honorable mentions in Qingqi and Changli. Since WuWa has multiple endgame modes, you can typically find a reason to use most DPS characters in some shape or form.
And if you need a desperate one, just put 2 DPS characters on one team.
So under no circumstances am I implying these are the only ones that can be viable. Brant, Yinlin, Shangli have a Grover, Cantarella.
I would say a well-built Brant hypercarry is probably in the top 5 as well. You put a really well-built Brant on Tide-Breaking Courage and you pair him with a Sanhua, and low-key, he's probably the best fusion DPS in the game. No doubt. He is the best fusion DPS in the game.
Even Danshin, for crying out loud, have their place in the meta too. But if you're looking for the best bang for your buck, I recommend these ones first and foremost. Then again, version 2.0.
Better than Encore? Yes, a well-built Brant hypercarry is like 30 times better than Encore. It's unbelievable how much better than Encore he is.
And 4 will be introducing Carlotta and Lupa, so definitely keep an eye out for those two. I'll put something in the pinned comment after they officially release, in the event either or both of them are good enough to replace anyone on the list. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below whether you agree or disagree with my choices, and as always, if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter @VarsFam, join my Discord server, and check out my other Wuthering Waves guides if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.
Alright, well, awesome video from Vars. I pretty much agreed with, I think, everything he said in there. I would say the only thing is that I wish he did mention the sort of, like, issues that a character like Phoebe can especially have in holograms. I think a lot of people, right, that have taken her into one-shot content see that her need for like a heavy attack and the full animation of that heavy attack to actually get it all done can be super, super, super fucking rough to do in content where you get one shot. So yeah, I would say maybe overstated her a little bit, but it is what it is. But yeah, overall, pretty much agree with everything else that was in there. I'm glad that he had Jiyan in the top 5 because, let's be real here, brother man kinda is. So with that, let me know what you all think. Peace.